this computer. Okay.
Yep, it says it's recording.
Great. So I'm Mrs. Park, the principal of Kirtner, and welcome everyone. Tonight we are going to go through the zones of regulation, which our counselors, Ms. Jinky Batanga and Ms. Carrie Ann Doy, have been diligently going through the classrooms and sharing with the staff as well as the students. So maybe you guys can introduce yourselves so that we get to know who you guys are, and then we can get started.
Sure. So again, I'm Jinky Batanga, Mrs. Batanga, as many of the students and families know. I'm the new elementary school counselor this year. I taught at Kirtner for the past 6 years. Some of you might have seen me around doing first grade and fourth grade.
My name is Carrie Ann Doy, and I am the mental health counselor at Kirtner. This is my first year, but I'm loving working with both Stephanie and Jinky.
All right. So before we even just get started, just to answer your question, Linda, regarding the every other week, the teachers for the classes will be posting it on their learning plan. So the goal is every other week, but it should be included in the learning plan as far as that goes. So unless it was in the learning plan this week, that might have been an error. So we can try to clarify that on the side note. So just go ahead and email me. Okay. Thank you, Linda. So again, we're excited to share the zones of regulation with you, parents, guardians, and families. We started to roll that. We kind of piloted this last year with a few classes, and I found it very successful in terms of students learning to express their feelings. This year, I'm even more excited because Ms. Doy is here to join me in implementing it. And we've already actually did the introduction to the teachers so that they were all familiar. And then we started to roll out the lessons with the classes, just starting with one of the zones. And you'll learn what the zones are as we kind of go through it today. But we're super excited, and our goal is that we kind of get everybody familiar with the zones so that hopefully we can support our Kirtner students towards student success. So we'll get started by first explaining what SEL is, or social emotional learning.
Yeah, so before we kind of dive into the meat of what zones are, I wanted to talk a little bit about SEL, which I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with, but SEL stands for social and emotional learning. And as the definition up here on the slide states, is the process through which we understand and manage emotions, set and achieve goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So there are 5 core competencies of social and emotional learning, according to CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And those competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So kind of how that wheel shows on this slide here is that these competencies are practiced not only in the classroom, but also by the school as a whole, and then also by larger systems, such as the students' homes and communities, which is why we've invited you all here tonight. There's a link at the bottom of this slide to the CASEL website. So there's a lot more information and resources about social emotional learning if you're interested in learning more. Support for SEL overall is pretty strong, and outcomes include improved student attitudes, fewer conduct problems, less emotional distress, and overall improved academic performance. So as we go through this presentation tonight, hopefully you all will get a better understanding of how Kirtner is implementing SEL in the classroom and what you all can do to help reinforce it outside the classroom.
All right, so, just like the teachers may have wondered, you might be wondering why zones of regulations. There's definitely a lot of SEL curriculums out there, but zones is something that we really wanted to focus on, that we found to show some effectiveness. But social emotional learning is our site and district goal to support student success. So with the zones of regulation, it's a curriculum that can help support that. So within the zones itself, the main focus is self-regulation, which is something that everyone continually works on whether or not we are cognizant of it. So we all encounter different things in our daily lives that test our limits from time to time. And if we're able to recognize when we're becoming less regulated, even as adults, that would include for us, and this is something that we'll be teaching the students, then we are able to do something about it to manage our feelings and get ourselves back to a healthy place, which you'll learn later is called the green zone. So for some people, this comes naturally, but for others, it's a skill that needs to be taught and practiced. So this quote was really kind of like impactful in a sense that, you know, life is 10% what happens to us. So that's only 10% what happens to us. And 90% of it is how we react to it. So yeah, this is by Charles Swindoll. And on the bottom there, I attached the link also for zones. So if you want to learn more about the curriculum, you can go there. There's a lot of different resources as well.
All right, so what are the zones? So the zones are a systematic cognitive behavioral approach used to teach self-regulation by categorizing the different ways we feel in states of alertness we experience into colored zones, which we'll get into a little more depth later. The goal of zones is essentially to teach students the skills to become more aware of their emotional states and energy states, as well as teaching them the skills to meet their own emotional and sensory needs and to cope with dysregulation. And so in addition to the curriculum, there's also a board game as shown in this picture that we are still working on trying to figure out a way to adapt virtually, but practices all the skills that the curriculum highlights as well.
The cool thing with that when we played with it a little bit is because they'll provide like different scenarios. So, you know, as you know, once we figure out how to kind of implement it through distance learning, I think it'll be really fun and a good practice for the students. So like we said earlier, the zones of regulation has 4 zones. So you can see like a visual right there. The blue zone is used to describe like low state of alertness, down feelings, such as when one feels sad, tired, sick, or bored. The green zone is used to describe a calm state of alertness. A person may be described like as happy, focused, content, or ready to learn when they're in the green zone. And this is where the optimal learning occurs, is the green zone. The yellow zone is also used to describe a heightened state of alertness and elevated emotions. But in the yellow zone, you have a little bit more control. And if you were to think about it, you can compare this to like a stoplight. So blue zone is more like kind of down, you know, kind of like the rest area. And green zone is kind of like a stoplight where it's green, you're going, you know, optimal learning is occurring. And then yellow zone, when you get to those kinds of feelings, it's like, whoa, we need to slow down a little bit. So a person in the yellow zone may be feeling stress, frustration, anxiety, excitement, silliness. Sometimes they get the wiggles. Sometimes they get nervousness. So this is where we're sort of like slowing down before we get to maybe a zone that might be less manageable. So the last zone is the red zone, and that is used to describe extreme heightened states of alertness and intense emotions. So this is compared to the red in a stoplight, where if a student or a person is in this zone, they might be feeling really elated or experiencing anger, rage, devastation, or terror. So when you get to this zone, it's like, you know, we need to stop and kind of, you know, try to manage our emotion.
All right, so there's no such thing as a bad zone. So this is a core concept that the zones curriculum really reinforces, is that there's no such thing as a bad zone. So we all experience all of the zones throughout the day, and this is perfectly normal and okay. And we might even experience them at different times of the day too. So I might wake up in the morning in the red zone, be in the blue zone by the afternoon, and maybe somewhere in between I'm in the green zone. All of this is normal and okay. So while not all behaviors are necessarily okay in certain contexts, all feelings are. So green is not associated with the good zone or good behavior or being good, just as the red is not the bad zone or being bad. So we're not putting judgment on feelings, rather we're just emphasizing being able to identify feelings and feeling states and being able to develop skills to help get students into the green zone where they're focused and ready to learn as they would need to be in the classroom.
All right, the great thing about these zones, just like we're saying, you know, once students are able to identify what zone they might be in. They could use some of the tools to either calm them or help them become a little bit more alert. So some of the tools that they can use to manage their feelings and states include sensory support, so different things they can touch, see using your five senses, calming techniques, sometimes even thinking strategies, just kind of doing like self-talk and kind of motivating themselves and things like that. So some of the tools indicated on this slide, for example, in the blue zones, and some of them might overlap. So it really depends on like an individual person, right? One tool might work for one person and a different tool might work for, differently with another person. So for the blue zone, some of the tools that you can use is that maybe you need to take a break or think happy thoughts, talk about your feelings, ask for a hug, maybe drawing a picture, okay? So green zone is where you're at, so you're completing your work, you're listening to the teacher, you're remembering your daily goal, helping others. If you're in the yellow zone where you need to slow down, you could take a break, you could talk to the teacher, you can squeeze a stress ball maybe just to kind of calm down. Sometimes going for a walk might help before you get to the elevated state, or taking 3 deep breaths. The red zone, kind of similar thing, taking a break, squeezing stress balls, taking deep breaths, sometimes counting to 10 or talking about my problem. On here, you see a little toolbox too with some empty, like blank lines. So this is something that we'll provide for you as well towards the end. But what the students in the classrooms will also be using, because they might have their own tools that they find will be more effective for them. So it's important to really personalize it as well. We have a lot of different ideas, but it's always nice to kind of personalize it.
So when we presented the zones of regulation to the Kertner teachers, we also invited them to participate in identifying a.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Am I on the wrong page?
Yeah, you got to go back one.
Okay. So as I just said, we presented this to the Kertner teachers, and when we did so, we asked them to participate in identifying a zone and a tool associated with each scenario, as the ones are listed here. So here's some distance learning related scenarios for you all just to think about. But just kind of go through the scenarios and think about what zone a student might be in. And the zone also might vary depending on the student. For example, I might be in the red zone and feeling really angry if my teacher didn't call on me to answer a question that I knew the answer to, but I also might be in the blue zone and I might be feeling sad. So it just kind of depends on the student. So if I was angry, I might take some deep breaths, but if I was sad, I might try and do something to lift my mood a little bit. So I might maybe like look at a picture of my dog that's sitting on my desk, or I might go in and try and talk to my mom during a school break. So you don't need to go through all of these. As Mrs. Park said, we're going to post this slide and presentation later, but these are just some of the examples that we went through with the teachers for you to think about.
Oh, there you go. Oops. There. We'll freeze. All right. So like I said, we already started some of the lessons. So you saw the different zones: blue zone, green zone, yellow zone, and red zone. What we're showing you is pretty much like the general lessons for what the zones look like. For the classes, we're really breaking it down because we really want to kind of dive in and really spend time for each zone to make sure that the students know the different kinds of feelings for each zone, like the different kinds of feelings that they might be feeling depending on what zone they're at. So what all of the classes have learned so far is the blue zone. So we talked about what you might be feeling, what kind of tools you might be using at that point, even what kind of facial expressions you might notice from people or their body language and things like that. So continuing on, we're going to continue with just teaching the green zone and talking about that and like what to expect and for behaviors like expected versus unexpected behaviors. And then again, continuing with the yellow zone and the red zone. Other things we'll be doing are zones bingo. So that's also something that we're trying to see how we can implement distance learning. We have a little bit of time, but that's a really fun one because they get to really match the things, but also pay attention to the facial expressions. I think that's a good skill for students to learn about. I mean, even grownups, right? Really paying attention, even if a person is not saying anything, but looking at their demeanor and kind of like their facial expressions and body language. And then pretty soon we'll be sharing a virtual zones and regulation strategy. So that's kind of cool. If you look at the bottom right of the screen, that's kind of what it looks like. And it's all, you know, things are clickable. So they'll be able to go to sensory and motor rooms and do different things there to kind of use as a tool if they happen to be in certain zones. And then there's a section there about doing self-talk. And even talking about, like, you know, the size of the problem, how big is it? Other things that's important too is identifying triggers. So when students are able to identify their, you know, the different feelings that they're going through, and maybe even tools to kind of help them get back to like the green state. Other things that's important too is identifying triggers. So then they'll be able to see some of the things that might have caused them to be in that zone. And for some scenarios or some instances, you know, they can try to work on preventing those so that they can kind of maintain their emotions a little bit more. And again, like I said, expected versus unexpected behaviors. We're going to be talking about understanding different perspectives, and then also good thoughts versus uncomfortable thoughts. And lastly, how our behavior impacts others. So yeah, I think what we'll be doing too is, as we complete the lessons, ultimately Miss Joy and I, we kind of got a website started. But at the time when we were kind of beginning it, we were like, what are we going to put here? So now, especially because we're rolling out this curriculum, I think it's important that we get our website together. So what we're going to do, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, is get our website running. And then as we complete each lesson for each class, we can upload that as well. That way you get to see at home what your students are learning in the classrooms as we go through the different lessons. This one is the expectations that we had talked about with the teachers, and hopefully we can have the same thing kind of happen at home. That way the students get really familiar with the zones and, you know, using the different colors to identify their feelings and the tools that they can use. So the expectations that we were hoping to get out of rolling out this curriculum from everyone, teachers, parents, caregivers, is using the zones language. So, you know, once we get to learning more about it, you know, you could share even how you feel. You know what, I'm feeling like I'm in the blue zone right now. You know, I didn't get much sleep last night. I feel a little tired. I think I need to, you know, get up and stretch so I can get back to green. So just kind of using the zones language. Or if they say, oh gosh, I feel like I'm in the red zone, what do you think triggered it? You know, so what were some of the triggers? What do you think? So just trying to really get used to the zones language, and then also encouraging students to be aware of what zone they are in so they can, you know, practice self-regulating their reactions and behavior. And like we were saying earlier, you know, their zones could change. You know, you probably experienced that, you know, before as well. Sometimes you could be really upset and then you take deep breaths and you get back to green, and then something else happens, and then all of a sudden you're like in the yellow zone. So just kind of sharing some of those experiences. Other things you can do is like check in, you know, just to see if they're able to identify the zone, and integrating the zones just in different things throughout the day. So if you're reading a book together, you can talk about maybe how characters might be feeling, paying attention to some of the words they're using, if there's illustrations, the drawings, if they're expressing with words, you know, noticing those things. And then again, modeling, sharing when your zone changes. And then real life, sometimes different scenarios happens that are like perfect learning opportunities. So trying to take advantage of that. And then again, like I said, it's really important to kind of pay attention to a person's affect, noticing their facial expression, body gesture, and voice tone that express emotion or feeling.
So this slide is a visual of how the zones curriculum maps onto those 5 CASEL competencies I mentioned earlier. And it also outlines how each of the zone skills can be used to promote each competency. So in rolling out the curriculum to students, as Ms. Matanga mentioned, we decided to focus on one zone and one corresponding tool set at a time. So last week we focused on the blue zone when we practiced identifying zones in videos, in books. Also, we worked on identifying the blue zone in other people. So we hit a lot of the self-awareness competency. So as we go further into the curriculum, we'll be incorporating a lot more of activities from all the competencies that you see here. So lastly, we wanted to leave you all with some resources and handouts if you wanted to include them in your student's home. So if you click on this link, and we'll make this presentation available, they're downloadable versions of the zones chart, the tools, and a sample toolkit for you to print also. There's a little bit more information too about the curriculum and its development. But yeah, we would just really like to encourage you to incorporate as much of the zones as is feasible in your family or in your home, so that the students are able to kind of generalize the knowledge that they're learning and practicing in the classroom to the home and in the community. So I think that's all that we have for you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us tonight. We'll be doing a Q&A, so if you have questions, feel free to stick around. If not, have a wonderful evening.
This is nice because if you click on this handout, it's literally 3 pages. The first page is, it just kind of tells you what the zones are again, so you can kind of really practice the different zone. And then you'll get the card that says blue, yellow, and then like the different signs, and then the toolbox. So you could, if you have a printer, you know, maybe print it out, and then you can post it somewhere to use as like reference to for the students, for your students. I think Stephanie's trying to open it right now. Yeah, so it just kind of gives you a gist of it. It's kind of like what we talked about, but in like a one pager. And then the little, what we call anchor charts, like what we use in the classrooms when we hang it on the wall so that we can use it as reference. So the second page and third page would be something that you could use for that. And then again, you can personalize it as well with the toolbox. So as you get familiar with it, you can ask your students, your kids, like, well, what do you think works for you when you're in the blue zone, when you're feeling down? And you'd be impressed at some of the things that they come up with as their tools. I mean, I've added and borrowed some even from what students have shared. So, and it's really cute to hear them talk, because even in our class last year, they really began to identify that on Monday mornings, most of us were in the blue zone because it's hard to kind of get resituated back in school. So you'll have students in line saying, I'm in the blue zone, Ms. Batanga. I didn't get enough sleep last night, or things like that. So, or I had a really fun weekend. So it's just neat to be able to really have the kids kind of use it. And then sometimes I'll see them in the middle of like independent time. You can tell they need like a little break. You'll see them like kind of leaning against the wall doing wall push-ups, because that could be like a tool also, just to kind of get them going, get some movement going. So, all right, let's see, Q&A.
And I just would like to re-emphasize the beauty of the zones is really, this curriculum is really about being able to express. It goes across all ages. So when you're younger and don't have the words to express your feelings, you know the colors, and you can kind of put yourself in that color, just kind of get a sense of where the child may be feeling. And as you get older, we notice with our 5th and 6th graders, it may not be as talkative with expressing themselves. So we can ask them, you know, what zone do you feel like you're in, to get a sense of, you know, having very little words, but still be able to convey their feeling. And that kind of gives us a sense, the adults get it, or other kids get a sense of like where they are and what space they may need or not need. And I think it carries over well to home. If you're not having a lot of communication by choice from their students or not, or they can't express themselves, you can say, hey, I know this week you learned about the blue zone, or some things that put you in that blue zone. Or you can use it for yourself. Today, I feel like, you know, I had a really hard day at work. I feel like more like I'm in the red zone, but maybe there's something that you can do or we can do together to put me in a different color, the zone. So I think it really carries very nicely over, you know, school, home, and across all ages. Okay.
So it says, will you be sending this presentation over email? Do I expect it from Parent Square? So what we'll do is we'll definitely upload it to Parent Square tonight, like right after we end the session. And like I said, once we get our website going, we will have that posted on our Kurtner website, and I'll announce that also to Parent Square. That way you'll be aware of when that takes place. I think that's it so far in terms of questions. We'll hang for a little bit too in case you think of more things.
Yeah, and I love to see in the chat and or the Q&A where, you know, that people want to, that you guys want to try it at home,
Mhm.
which is great because it really reinforces what's happening at school or in virtually, but that it's able to be used at home as well. And that's really the intent, is that we're able to use it all so they can use it naturally.
Mhm. Okay, let me check the chat also. Okay. How cute. Somebody's kindergartner, is it VG? The kindergartner was talking about the zones today. I was like, oh.
And so can you guys give us a timeline as far as when you'll go through the different color zones? Like, what's that look like? Because we just finished the blue zone.
Yeah, so it's every other week for now. So Blue Zone was last Thursday, so nothing this Thursday. Green Zone will be next Thursday. I'm looking at the dates. Hold on real quick. And we can,
22nd and 23rd.
yes, 22nd and 23rd, October 22nd and 23rd, so Thursdays and Fridays. We'll do the Green Zone. And then I believe November 5th and 6th will be the Yellow Zone. And then November 19th and 20th will be the Green Zone. And then I think from there, we'll kind of switch to a monthly one. We'll still continue practicing it, but like a monthly one after that. I'll, you know, like I said, I'll try to get that going on our website so that it's more easily accessible. But in general, even as we go through the lessons for the classes, I think I'll upload it right after we go over it. Because sometimes even as you're doing the lessons, you might make a little bit of changes. So we'll definitely get all those going, and we'll let the Kurtner families know.
Yeah,
Thank you so much
and
for the interest, though. It's exciting. Pass it on. Get other parents. Tell other parents about it. We are recording this too, so we'll upload this somewhere as well so that they can watch the presentation. And you can always, you know, reach us if you have any questions. jbatanga@musd.org, or go ahead.
Mine is KEDOI@musd.org.
yeah, and I just want to say that Kurtner is very fortunate to have 2 counselors on site. That's for our students, but also as well as the staff and the parents as well. So if there's any inquiries, please reach out. They are here for all of us because we know it's definitely a challenging time as we're in distance learning, and know that the school is here to support you and your families. So we thank you for coming this evening, and please pass it on.
Or email us, you know, if you have questions. We'll still hang back a few more minutes in case there's any last minute questions.
So there is a question: is it possible to include mindfulness activities in the daily schedule of students as one of the coping strategies?
I think that's going to vary with teachers. I think there's actually a lot of classes that are including a lot of mindfulness activities already, but those are definitely things that we're going to try to implement as well. I mean, those are different tools that they can use. Of course, we'll be doing those things as well. I know a lot of the teachers are doing a lot of SEL activities as well, which can, you know, can tie into the zone. So it's really awesome that they're already implementing a lot of those things. I think I might have sent something about mindfulness also. It's like yoga ed, or depending on what they're feeling, they have like different stretches that they could do.
Right. And in some classrooms, they are doing like 5th grade, they're doing their own SEL in the classroom with jobs and sharing like that. The other question was, is meditation a bit too early for kids?
What do you think, Miss Doi? I feel like
I think it depends. I think it can be modified. I think mindfulness for any age group is, you can work that in. But yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think it's worth trying. Even if it's only like for a minute or two, you can kind of build up to it. And it depends on if your child is interested. It's worth a try.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think just that breathing strategy could
Mhm.
be that part of meditation where
Yeah.
you're just taking a breath in and out because it kind of just relaxes your body a little bit.
Mhm.
Linda is asking, Ms. Batenga, was the next lessons green, then yellow, then red?
Yeah. Yes. What was that?
Yes.
Oh, I missed this one.
Yes, that was a question in the chat box.
Hold on. Let me go through I didn't realize I missed some of the questions. Green, then yellow, then red. Yes, it is. The next one is green and then yellow and then red. Hmm. There was no session today for zones of regulations. But thanks for letting me know. It sounds like I'll probably double check with the teachers as well to make sure that the dates and times aren't mixed up. Because now there's a couple of people that sounded like they waited today. So, so I don't know if there was like a misinformation somewhere. I'll definitely look into that, but it is every couple of weeks for now until we're done with the 4 zones.
All right. Well, if there are any questions, again, we thank you for the time that you spent with us. More parent engagement. We'll send out a Google form, kind of give them some feedback about this evening and what other kind of parent engagement pieces you would like to see. We would definitely would love that. There's a question in the chat that says, is this taught through role play with students?
We could definitely include that. Like I said, in the board game, there was a lot of different scenarios, but as we kind of need role play, I think role play is really helpful. So yeah, that's definitely something that we could implement in the lessons as well.
Yeah, for sure. If everybody was on site, it would definitely be applicable where in the moment you could say what color zone you were, would be like a game, right? But you could do that at home. For sure, you could do that at home.
Mhm. Role playing is like a really important
Yeah.
tool to really practice just a lot of things in general. Yeah. Oh, another, or did I miss that one?
Yes, the question was, are you planning virtual Halloween to cheer up kids? Unfortunately, we don't have any plans for any virtual Halloween. It'll be on a class by class basis. But at this time, until we can get more word from what our county and our public health and the superintendent, we're just kind of staying away from the temptation of having any gatherings at this time. But I do agree, it does help us, not only the students, but it also helps the adults to cheer up as well. Okay, well, thank you for coming. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen and end the session for everybody. So have a good night.
Thank you.